Thank you, Mr. Blaxell. In regular order, I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. But, Mr. Wright, this testimony today has been revealing. And in many ways, what struck me has been the fact that we can have been at this issue for so long, and there's such a wide divergence just even in the scientific definition of where we are, the accurate identification. You've spent a great deal of your time, resources, and passion in this issue. Now, one of the things I was trying to explore, and I know you've been discussing, we've got this interagency autism coordinating committee that the government has, but it seems to be missing the mark if we can be so far off on this. So give me your impression of what we should be doing right.
What we need is a national strategic plan. There are many government agencies that are doing a lot of good things, but they're not necessarily together. The money is significant, but it isn't necessarily spent in as thoughtful a way as possible. There needs to be a combination of the CDC, the NIH, and the FDA as an example to actually undertake the correct research, stay with it, especially in safety research on vaccines going forward. And there needs to be some place, there should be an Assistant Secretary of Health. The ASH title has been around for a long time. Somebody has to coordinate all this activity and try to make, that's where you bring in services. The NIH doesn't do services, so they'll just tell you that. We don't do services. CDC doesn't do services. And so you've got, but yet it's done inside of Health and Human Services, but it's not coordinated. So a national plan, a national strategic plan would be what I would advocate to try to pull that together. I think that's a very important thing. It also involves continuing medical education for pediatricians. It also involves going to medical schools. There's nothing. You know, mental conditions occupy a fraction time in medical school. Then people go into practice, and what we deal with is a lot of ignorance. So you have to keep, that has to be organized. So that would be my fondest hope.
Mr. Badish, did you have a comment with respect to that?
I would just suggest, with all respect, that the IAC doesn't coordinate.
I'm sorry?
That the IAC doesn't coordinate. And that until we recognize, as Mr. Wright says, that we have to look at this as a national societal issue. And you can't have a body that's tied into, as Mr. Wright said, into a health research mode, looking at this whole element of autism. The service needs are there, the civil rights issues. When you don't have the Department of Education sitting at the table, where every single parent and every...
Or Department of Labor might be another suggestion, or even the Department of Justice.
It has to be a coordinated body. And with respect to the administration, we've talked to them, and I think they understand that now. But it has to start, in our opinion, from moving IAC, which is, as Mr. Smith knows, is a great concept, but it's in the wrong place. And it has to have a societal commitment that we're going to address this need as a lifespan issue from birth till death. And until then, we're not going to get anything. IAC, I've been the president of the Autism Society every year and a half. IAC, despite what they said, they've never approached us. So if they're doing a national plan, God love it, you would think they would approach the largest grassroots organizations. I assume they haven't approached most of us at this table. That's a major problem.
Mr. Black, so if I understood your testimony, you identified that there has been extensive research going on in something that you would suggest isn't even relevant to the discovery of what's going on. Was it genetics, or was I correct in that?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we've spent tens of millions, hundreds of millions on what I call the great autism gene hunt. You know, when common sense would tell you that if we've gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 88, something has changed.
Who, in addition, adopts your position, and why would that issue not have been raised prior to today?
I think it comes back to the strategic planning issue. When a group of us pushed for the Combating Autism Act of 2006, one of the critical provisions of that was the idea of a strategic plan to make IAC and to make the NIH funding mechanisms accountable to the public. I spent 25 years in management consulting. I was a senior partner at one of the top management consulting firms in the world. If there's anything I can claim to be an expert in, and I hate to invoke expertise because that's often a way to keep the people out, but I'm an expert in strategic planning, and I was asked to participate in one workshop at NIH, and I can tell you that the process that we were engaged in was an interesting one. It had nothing remote.
Were you shut out with respect to your commentary, or was there?
It was just an occasion to gather a group of people for a meeting, and the leaders of the NIH did what they wanted to do in the first place anyway. It wasn't accountable in any meaningful way to they didn't. It was. You get into the details, but there was an attempt not to have a strategy. It was an attempt to defend the status quo.
My time is up, but you know, one of the things, and Mr. Issa has clearly stated the intention of this committee to continue to look at this, and that would be you would arm us if you would help us with identifying the kind of questions that you would like to have asked if we had these same individuals from that coordinating committee sitting at this table that would help us articulate in your voices the kind of inquiry that would shake that and produce a result that would help us deal just on the front end. And I'm sympathetic to all your issues on the back end as well, but my time has run out. And so at this point in time,
I would suggest that those answers might be urgency, goals, milestones, time frames, and passion.
In that order.